My name is Chef Walker-Barrett. I am a chef lecturer here at the School of Hospitality and Tourism Management, UTECH, and I'm also the chef and creator of Street Food Saturdays. Today I have my colleague Dwight Sylvester who will be cooking with us, and we are going to be showing you how to make a pork roast with some market vegetables, a Sorrel Picante sauce, some Drunken plantain, and just delicious food. And to start with our pork roast today, we're going to be needing our lovely pork belly. And can I tell you, pork belly is bacon, so don't be scared now. This is what it looks like. So you'll need 2 kilos of pork belly. So this is where the bacon comes from. This would have been sliced up. So I'm going to wash it and we're going to marinate it, and I'll show you how to prepare your pork roast for your Christmas dinner. So we're just gonna wash it under running water and get it nicely dried. Because we're roasting it, we want to crisp the skin up, and moisture is the enemy of crispness. However, don't worry if you don't get it crisp, it still will be delicious. So on our tray here, we're just going to turn the skin side up, and you're going to take a sharp knife and you're just going to cut just some little slits all the way through the skin until you get to the meat underneath. Now, a friend of mine always say pork without skin is no pork. We all love the skin, so we're keeping the skin on. However, if you're not into eating pork skin, you could ask your butcher to give you the pork belly skinless. Now, if you feel as if the pork belly is a little bit too fatty for you, in the culinary world, fat is flavor, but if you want a leaner cut of meat, you could also use a pork shoulder or pork leg or even pork rib. In addition to your 2 kilos of pork belly, you'll need the following spices to make that pork belly absolutely delicious. So you're going to need some salt to taste. And in cooking, we say salt to taste because everybody's intake of salt is different. Then you're going to need the lovely pimento. We're using 1/4 cup of pimento and it is grounded. You will also need 2 tablespoons of cloves, and you can grind this as well in your blender or spice grinder. You will also need 2 tablespoons of minced garlic, 2 tablespoons of minced fresh ginger, and finally a 1/4 cup of olive oil. And then you just rub this onto your pork belly and just let it marinate for a bit, and then we can roast it. So to start with, we're going to add salt. Salt is everything in cooking. However, if you don't like salt, that's all right. This is kosher salt, and this is one of the purest form of salt. So we're gonna add salt, lots of it. It might look a whole lot to you, but pork really loves salt. We're gonna get in there, we're gonna add the salt. Then we're going to add some pimento. This pimento was grind. I grind this in my blender. So if you have a blender or a coffee grinder, you can put your pimento in. This is clove. We're adding clove. These are little black things you put on the ham. We ground it up as well. And we're adding that to our pork. And now we're going to add some fresh aromatics. We're adding some minced ginger all over the flesh of the pork. We will now add some garlic. And lastly, we're going to add some olive oil. Now I'm using olive oil, but you can use whatever oil is in your pantry. And then we're just going to rub this in. Just rub it in like so. Now this is ready to go into the oven. However, feel free to marinate this for an hour or as long as overnight. Now we rub our seasoning in. Now we're going to take it from our tray and just slide it on our cutting board. This could make one big roast, or you could choose to make 2 small roasts with it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to actually cut it in 2. So if you have a smaller family, you could buy 1 kilo. If you have a large family like myself, you can buy 2 kilos of pork belly. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to just roll it into a log. Just roll it just like that. Just to have the skin side looking up at us. We're going to also do that to the other piece, and we're going to start from the small end in. So we're going to just roll it towards me for this one, And now we have 2 beautiful pork roasts, one for Christmas Day and one for Boxing Day. Now, because we wanted to keep the shape during the cooking, what we're going to use some banana bark as our safety piece. We're going to actually tie the meat. So we're going to slide it underneath, and then we're going to just give it a nice little tie. Now, for those who don't know what banana bark is, this is from the tree of the banana. This is the brown part of it. So if you have banana tree on the outside of your yard, and they're strong, I can't even burst it, so we're going to cut it. And again, we're going to tie, just slide it under and tie. Don't worry, this won't burn. We soak it in water before. And again, we're going to tie. Now, this in culinary is called trussing. What it does, it helps the meat to keep its shape, because meat is filled with protein, and in the cooking process, protein coagulates. What that means, it gets firm, and because we want, when this is finished, we want it to stay into the log shape. Now we're going to also tie this one as well. Again, we slide it under and we give it a little tie. Now, if you don't have the banana bark, feel free to use the butcher's twine. It's a food safe material, just like the banana bark. So we're going to tie it just like that. And we're going to tie this one. And the last one, I'm just going to give it a little bit of bow. And we will go around and cut the excess off, just like that. Just cut it off so that it looks neat. If you have a scissors, you could use your scissors to cut this as well. It's Christmas, you want to make it look pretty. So you want to take that extra step to just tie your meat. And this is recommended once you're roasting any protein that is big and you're roasting it and you want it to keep its shape, you have to tie it. Now we have our baking sheet. For easy cleanup in the holiday, you want to put some foil on your baking sheet, and then you just want to go to the store and get yourself a little, what we call a cooling wrap. They're very inexpensive. Put it over the sheet. What that does, it allows air to flow, and so we will get a nice crisp on the outside roast and moist on the inside. So we're going to put our roast on the rack. Just going to bring it closer to me, and this is what we're going to do now, just for some extra flavor, because we didn't add any salt to the outside. The salt helps to crisp the skin, so we're going to add some salt and just kind of just rub it in. Rub it in, and then lastly we're going to go back to our olive oil, and we're going to just add just a little bit more. Rub it on. If you notice, we didn't add the minced ginger or garlic on the outside of the skin, because if we do, they will burn, and we don't want that. So we put the goodness of the garlic and ginger on the inside. You want to make sure that the pork is sitting on the seam side where we wrapped it. That way it's sure to stay together. Any little part that is sticking out, just kind of push it in to make sure it's nice and neat. And this is ready for the oven. Our oven was preheated to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to let it cook at that high temperature for 30 minutes, and then we will lower the temperature to 350 and let it cook at an additional 40 minutes while we baste the pork occasionally with the drippings from it. While we wait on our pork to cook, we're going to go ahead now and prepare our Sorrel Picante sauce for pork. And for that, you'll need, of course, some fresh sorrel, wash and drain. You will also need 1 small onion chopped. You need some cornstarch to thicken up the sauce. You're going to need a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. You will need about 1/4 cup of chopped fresh ginger. You're going to need 2 Scotch bonnet pepper, because picante means spicy, so this is a spicy sauce. We're going to need just 2 cloves of garlic. We will need some sugar for sweet, and then for a blending liquid, we'll need 1 cup of vinegar. So the first thing we'll do is add the vinegar to the blender jar. I'm gonna put 1 cup of vinegar, and you can use, I'm using white vinegar, you could use whatever vinegar you have in your pantry. Then we're going to be adding our sorrel straight to the blender. This looks like a lot, but it's going to blend all the way down. So you just pack it in there. Now, just push it down, it will blend. All right, seems like we can't put any more for now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add the onions, and then I'm just going to give it a blend and add the remaining ingredients. So we put it on the blender. Make sure everything is secured. Cover the blender. This blender is a bar blender, so it's a very strong blender, so it'll blend it very fast. So we're going to turn it on. We're going to use our wooden spoon and just push the sorrel down and give it another blend. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to remove the cover and we're going to add the remainder of our sorrel. Put it in. Then we're going to be adding the ginger that we talked about earlier. It's a picante, so we're adding 2 whole Scotch bonnet peppers, seed and all. We're adding some ginger. And we will add our cornstarch directly in. The cornstarch is going to give the sauce the thickness. We're adding some cinnamon. And of course, for sweet, we're adding some sugar. Now, again, we're gonna cover this and allow everything to just combine. Okay. Now, I'm just gonna look to make sure it is, you can make it chunky. I prefer it chunky because it gives the pork a character. But if you want it smooth, go ahead and blend it a little more. So now we are going to add it directly to this sauce pot, and we're gonna allow it to cook until it gets nice and thick. So here we go. So we're pouring it into our sauce pot. Look at that, kind of looks like a smoothie, right? But it's a sauce. I want to make sure I get everything out. I want to turn our burner on to like a medium. Just put this over here. This, you want to watch it because we add the cornstarch, and cornstarch will gelatinize. That is what gives the sauce that thickness that we want. However, we don't want it too thick, so we have to stand here and stir. If your sauce is a little bit too thick for your liking, feel free to just add some water, or since it's Christmas time, you can just throw some wine in there, not a problem. So it can be as thick as you want it to be, but we really want it to be a sauce consistency. So we're going to stir it until it comes up to temperature, and then we will see if it is at the thickness that I desire or not. If it is too thick, we will add water. If it is too thin, we will add some more cornstarch. Our sorrel picante is now ready. This is what it looks like. So we talked about how it was going to get thick earlier, and this is the result of adding the cornstarch. So it is at the perfect consistency, nice and red and beautiful. So we're just going to set it aside. Set it aside to cool. One little tip, when you're making sorrel, it's best to cook it in a stainless steel pot. And so this is a stainless steel pot, so it'll be all right in the pot. If you don't have a stainless steel pot and you're cooking it into an aluminum pan, we suggest you pour it out of the pan as soon as it cooks. So we'll set this aside and we wait on our pork to roast. Our pork has been roasted in the oven for 30 minutes, and now it's time for us to give it its first baste. So here we go. Well, look at that. Now what I'm going to do is take a little of the fat that rendered down and just kind of put it back onto the top. We do this because we want the skin to get as crisp as possible. So again, you just lean it to the side, take some fat up, and just put it back. Now this roast is pork belly. It really doesn't need a lot of basting because it renders down, release the fat, and that's what's going to keep the meat moist, and it basically is basting itself. That is why I love to use this particular cut of meat. It looks very good. So now we're going to turn the oven down to 350 and continue roasting this piece of meat for another 40 minutes or so. Put it back. It will continue to cook, and we will baste it at least 2 more times, and then we will have our pork ready. We have 15 minutes remaining on our pork, so in the meantime, we are going to prepare our drunken plantains and sauteed market vegetables. The ingredients that we'll need for drunken plantains are, of course, ripe plantains, cinnamon powder, sugar, butter, beer. This is where the drunkenness comes from. Because it's Christmas, we have a little garnish of red bell peppers and some scallions, the green parts of the scallion that we're going to garnish our drunken plantain with, just to make sure it looks extra pretty on the plate, right? What we're going to do with the plantain is similar to what we do at breakfast time. We're going to pan fry the plantain, but we're going to make it a little bit special by adding the cinnamon, the sugar, and the beer. So follow me to the stove and I'll show you how to make our drunken plantains. We are going to need oil, and our oil is already preheated in our pot. What we'll be doing is just frying the plantains. So I'm just gonna put them in and allow them to get nice and brown on all sides. Ripe plantains are naturally sweet, so in the frying process, what happens is that the sugars in the plantains caramelizes, and that's what gives it its brown color that we all love. So in the true spirit of the holidays, of course, we're going to add some alcohol so that we can feel merry. But today we're going to be adding beer, so that's where the drunken part of the plantain dish came from. So let's take a look to see if it's brown. Just allow it to brown. Okay, so now that we have all of our plantains brown on one side, what we're going to do, we're going to reduce our heat to low, and we're going to pour some of the oil out of the pot. So I have this pot right here waiting. Just pour off the excess oil. Now we're going to add some sugar. So we're going to add some sugar just to give it that nice caramel taste. Let's add some sugar in. We will add some cinnamon powder. You know, cinnamon is nice with plantains, so we're going to add that. Just give it a stir. Let me just put our heat back up a little bit more so that the caramelization can take place. And then finally, now this is the trick. When you're using alcohol, you want to turn the heat off before you add it. So we're going to add our beer. Just going to pour it on. And we're just going to let that cook together. Turn it back on. And we're gonna let the plantain cook into the beer. Now we're just using 1 bottle of beer for this amount of plantain. If you have more plantain, of course, you can choose to use more beer. And we're going to just let this stay here and cook until all the beer evaporates out. And then the sugar that we added in first is going to get caramelized and just coat our plantains. And then finally, just before service, we're just going to add just a little bit of cold butter. This is optional. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but the butter gives it a sheen. So what we're going to do, make sure that all the plantain get coated with that wonderful beer. And we're just going to leave it to cook. While we wait on our beer to evaporate from our plantains, we are going to go ahead and do our sauteed vegetables that we'll be serving with our porks. And for sauteed market vegetables, we're going to need the following ingredients. We will need some green beans, pak choy, red or white cabbage. Today we're using red cabbage because we're in the festive season. We're going to be using some cauliflower, and then for seasoning, we're going to be using some onions and garlic and scallion. So let's make our sauteed market vegetables. The first thing I'm going to do, these are green beans that I cut and wash. I have a pot here with boiling water. I'm just going to add the beans directly into the water and allow them to just cook a little bit. While we wait on our beans to boil, which is going to literally take 2 minutes, we're going to continue the sauteing process by adding our onions. So I'm just going to add our onions to our pot. This onion was mixed up already with some garlic, so we're just going to saute the onion. Now when you're making vegetables does not take a long time to cook, so less is best if you want the nutrients in your vegetables and of course the crunch. Let's go back and look at our plantain. Look at that. We spoke about it caramelizing and we're almost there. While we wait on our onions to saute, we're just going to go back to our plantain and just add a dab of cold butter. Now this step is optional, so we're adding about a tablespoon of cold butter and we're just going to swirl it in. Mix everything in to give it a nice sheen. And remember that garnish that I spoke about. This is some red pepper. This is optional. So I'm gonna add that in. And our drunken plantain can just chill out on low while we go back to our sauteed vegetables. So now we're going to be adding to the pot our cauliflower. Now these cauliflower are the yellow ones. Add a few cauliflower. So the cauliflower looks like a brain, and then when you cut it into small pieces, these are referred to as florets. So I cut them down into florets. We're going to saute them. Just toss everything with the onions. Now we're layering in the vegetables in. Now we're going to add our pak choy. Give that a toss and we see the colors coming through nicely. While we give an eye on our string beans. Now we're going to layer in some red cabbage. Not too much red cabbage. And all of this is going to get wilted together. And finally, we will take our beans directly from our boiling water and we're going to add it to our saute pot. Turn the fire up and we're going to give this a stir. Let's go back to our drunken plantains. Our drunken plantains are ready, so I'm just going to turn this off. Now let's add some salt to our sauteed vegetables. So we're just going to season close to the end with some salt. And then finally, we're adding in some chopped scallions. And again, we're going to toss this in. And our vegetables are ready. You always want to make sure that your vegetables are crunchy. And that's it. Now, there's something in cooking called carry-over cooking. What that means is that food continues to cook until it cools down to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. So you want to stop the cooking halfway through if you don't want to overcook your vegetables, and that's what we did. So our vegetables are ready. We're just going to go over to our service area and plate this up and have our Christmas dinner, or Christmas pork roast with our sauteed vegetables and drunken plantains. Now, this is our market vegetables. You see that array of color? Now, vegetables are very, very important to any meal. For the meal to be balanced, you need to have a little bit of carbs, protein, fat, and vegetables. We get our vitamins and minerals and our roughage and so on from our vegetables. Sometimes our diet is lacking of vegetables, and so you want to go to the market and get your fresh veggies, or the supermarket, and include these vegetables in your diet. We will now go and check on our pork, and once our pork is ready, we're going to let it rest for 10 minutes. Resting is very important for any roast, because after all of that heat, you need to allow the meat to rest so that the juices can recirculate back into the meat so that you can have a nice juicy mouthfeel. If you don't allow the meat to rest after roasting, when you slice into that meat, all of that beautiful juice is going to run out on your cutting board, and we don't want that. So we're going to go and remove our pork, rest it for 10 minutes, and then it is dinner time. Our pork has been roasting for 2 hours, and it is now ready to be devoured. We're going to take it out of the oven, and remember, we're going to allow it to rest. This is very important. Allow the meat to rest for at least 10 minutes before we carve into it, before we devour that beautiful pork belly roast that we're having for Christmas dinner. Oh, look at this, our crispy pork belly roast. We got the skin. You hear that? That is what flavor sound like. So now we're going to allow this beautiful piece of meat to just rest. We're going to remove our banana twine. So remember now, you don't have to run to the store to buy butcher twine. You can, if you have a banana tree in your backyard, or if your neighbor do, you can just take it off the bark, or even a plantain bark, and tie your meat and see what happens. It keeps the shape during the cooking process. So we're going to take it over to the station and allow it to rest. Our pork belly roast is now rested, and so we're ready to dive in. But before we do that, we want to remove the banana bark twine that we used to hold our meat together. See how the meat kept its shape during the cooking process. So this is all you need: a pair of scissors or a paring knife, and you're just gonna cut it and just remove it. Get it out, put it to the side. Again, if you're a chicken eater and you're doing chicken, you can truss it with the banana twine. And what I like about the banana twine is that it almost becomes part of the finished dish. It gets crisp up in the oven. So we just want to remove it. So don't feel bad if you don't get all of it out. It's a natural product. And this is what our pork roast looks like. So I'm actually going to be serving this small roast since we have a small board. So let's put this off to the side, and we are going to cut into our beautiful roast. For this, you need a sharp knife. Now listen to this. This is what you get from roasting your meat at the appropriate temperature and basting it in between. So we are going to cut in. You want to hear that nice crunch, and look at that. Remember those marks that we made before? That was important because I knew we were going to get the skin crisp, so it's best to mark the meat before it's cooked, so it cuts a lot easier that way. Let's take these extra banana leaf, twine out, and this is our pork belly roast with our Sorrel Picante sauce. And we want to take the time out to wish you and your family happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever you call it, from PBC Jamaica, and of course from the School of Hospitality and Tourism Management, UTECH.